Hi YouTube, welcome back to Wtf Rc Cars. So carrying on with the quick vids for the NB4 Plus, we're going to have a look at the RX set menu today. So on this one we got a whole load of stuff that we can configure. So you've got your bind set menu, you've got your classic and enhanced receivers. Your enhanced receivers will be all of the ones that have got the BVD plug. So basically any of the more modern type receivers like this one, where you've got your new ports, so they say NPA through to D, you've got your BVD connector, and the ground ones tend to be yellow, the flight ones tend to be orange. There are a few exceptions to rule, because there's the INR4 gyro receiver that's like a purpley colour. And I think we've now got the waterproof rated ones for the ground and boats that are blue. But if you've got the standard receivers, and it does tell you which they are, FGR4, 4S, 4P, FTR4, FTR10, FTR16S, you can bind in that mode. If you're binding an enhanced receiver, you've got a few more options. You can use 2 receivers. So if you wanted to use 8 channel, but you'd only got 2 4-channel receivers, so like the FGR4B or I think it's the FGR4D and B. But basically, you can pair them up to give you 8 assignable channels. So you can go into dual RX mode, and then you can set your start channel for each one. So your first one, if you had it starting at steering, and the second one, you had it starting at channel 4, then effectively you can end up with 8 channels. Does get a bit interesting, and I have done videos on how to bind these up. But you've got bind for your master receiver and bind for your slave. So it is an interesting one. You can play about with all these settings, and it does give you the option of using separate receivers and getting more channels. You've also got like option of, say you were running a truck and trailer, you can have a separate battery pack in trailer powering a different receiver, so you don't actually have to have a physical connection between the truck unit and the trailer unit, or the tractor and the trailer, depending on where you come from. But you can control them both off one controller, but have 2 totally separate parts of the RC working independently. Quite interesting setup.
Please confirm.
But if you're not binding all dual receivers up and everything, you've still got the start channel, and I've seen a few people have some weird issues where they've gone in playing with this and set it to channel 3, then they have no throttle and steering when they bind. So make sure your start channel set to steering when you bind it, and then you just click bind and it binds up. Then we've got the interface protocol. Now these are the new ports, so NPA through to D, and you can go in here and you can select what the output is that you want, or the input. So if you're running one of the new Flysky servos, or Power HD, or I think is it MKS maybe, they do IBUS 2 servos. So on this one you'd set IBUS 2 to one of your new ports, and you'd use that as the connection. You've also got the IBUS for your sensors, so you can turn it into a sensor port. So you've got IBUS in and IBUS out. You've got S-Bus connection for devices that need S-Bus, or you can have PPM or PWM. If you've got it set on PWM, it's going to give you the stock connectivity. So if we looked at like the FTR12B, it tells you that your top 3 ports, and I believe this end port, are all assignable as new ports, and that's where you'd configure it in here. It's a little strange on most of these receivers, because your new ports are running on channels like 1 to 12, but then they run backwards when it runs A to D. So you do have to look at the little legend on it. Looking at this, and I think it's this end, one in from this side, that's actually the last new port, not this end. That's channel 1. So it'd be channel 9 that you can configure as new port D. Then we've got this failsafe menu. So you can go in here, you can tell it that your IBUS and everything, you want no output. If it goes into failsafe mode, you can press and hold that little icon at the bottom, and that'll cut the RF. So then your RC will react as though it's got no signal, so you can see what it's actually going to do. You can individually go into each one of these. You can give it a fixed value, you can tell it to hold what it's doing, or free is basically it just releases the channel. Now, depending on whether you're running sort of a nitro, is one of the times when I'd come in here and I'd definitely change the throttle. And on that, you'd probably want to set it to a fixed position. So you just move the throttle to where you want it, and then you back out, and it locks at that position. So you'd put slight brake on a nitro. So if you do lose signal, it applies the brake and you don't get a runaway. Not so good doing that on an electric, depending on how you've got your ESC. If you've got reverse turned off, then it'd brake. If you've got reverse turned on, in all likelihood, it'll bugger off backwards, and you don't want that. So probably on electric, you'd leave it to free, and you can fix all of them. If you press the bottom one, it'll fix all to a fixed value. But that just covers the failsafe. Servo frequency is an interesting one. So if you're running a classic receiver, you can set them generally from 0 to 400. If you're running an enhanced receiver, you have more options. You can set it all the way up to 1000. And the enhanced ones, rather than setting all ports to the actual same frequency, the enhanced receivers can set each individual port. Or you can go in and set all channels. Because we've got this set up that it'd bind to an enhanced, so you've got all the way up to 1000 Hertz, 833, 380, which is quite a popular one, 95 for the analog, or you can go to custom. If you look in your instructions for your servos, the majority of the standard ones on market will say 333 Hertz. So if we set this to 333 and set it to all channel, then everything on your receiver will be running at 333 Hertz. There's a dead giveaway that you've got this wrong. So basically, if you look at your servo and it's constantly twitching like mad, so you'd see, rather than it just sat still, you'd see it twitching really quickly. Usually because you've got this frequency set too high, especially stuff like the cheapo Traxxas servos. One of the other bizarreness with Traxxas, some of their ESCs, you'll never find this with Hobbywing or any brand like that. They'll all run at 333, but you can get a weird issue with Traxxas ESCs where you have to turn this down to below 285, and the issue you get with it is the ESC won't calibrate, and it's usually because you come in here and you see that it's set on like 380 or set on custom, but you've left custom at 400, which is the stock setting for it. It's too fast for some of the Traxxas ESCs, so you'll try and use it, the car won't start moving. You'll try and calibrate your ESC and it'll just fail to calibrate every time. And it's usually because you've got this frequency set too high. It's too quick for Traxxas. There is some dirt cheap ESCs on market that have a similar issue, but usually if you're not being able to calibrate your ESC, that's the first thing I'd check. Other thing, also check that your neutral zone is set to 0. They don't like them when they're offset. You've also got your IBUS 2 setups, but it'll tell you to choose the IBUS 2 setup in the top menu first. IBUS setup, exactly the same. You have to configure up on the top your interface protocol before you've got the options to set them. PWM conversion, basically you can set it up for IBUS, IBUS 2, set your start channel and then your servo frequency and then configure, and you can set everything in there. I believe that's one of the menus you use when we're setting up this little thing, which is like an IBUS 2 breakout. So this would let you configure one of the new ports to IBUS 2, and then you can use this to send out the IBUS 2 signal to multiple different devices. And if you want to power really powerful devices off it, you can give it its own external power feed as well. But I've already done videos on that, and it's the same on this as it is on the NB4 and Pro. You've also got your RSSI output, so you can turn it on, set your channel. Then further down, RX battery monitor. Now this is an interesting one because I've seen quite a few people saying what do we do with this icon, and can we have this so it doesn't just stay full. This is where you configure that. So you've got your alarm voltage, which it'll set the alarm off when the RX voltage drops to that. Your low voltage and high voltage, if you think of that as the top and bottom of your battery icon. So if you know that your BEC is set to 7.4 volt, you can up this and set it to 7.4. So your icon will show full properly. Your low voltage is what you want it to read when it's flat, so you actually get a working icon. Your alarm voltage is what you want it to beep at if this voltage drops low. More useful on a nitro or a petrol engine RC where you're running a separate battery pack. If you're running an electric, then you're probably not so interested in the stock voltage, because that will be your ESC's BEC voltage to the actual receiver itself. So that's never going to change as you're using it. But what you can do is go into this. If you've got an external voltage sensor, you can have that reading. If you're using the BVD, you can have that reading. If you've got the actual IBUS 2 power sensor on, you can set it to that. Or if you've got an IBUS 2 ESC, you can actually have the ESC power reading on here. So it'll give you the direct voltage that that ESC is seeing. But any of the enhanced ones, you've got your BVD cable, so you can set it to that. And then these voltages, you've got to configure these to the actual total package LiPo pack power. So if you were running 2S, although 2S batteries said they're 7.4 volt, they're actually 8.4 when they're fully charged. So your full would be 8.4. Your low voltage, probably going to run 3.3 volts per cell. So you'd want that to 6.6 volt. So battery completely empty would be 6.6 volt. Battery completely full would be 8.4 volt. And then you could set your alarm to trigger at anything down to just above the low voltage. So if we drop that, wouldn't advise draining it down that far, but you could have the completely dead at 6.4 volt, and then you could have your alarm trigger at 6.6. Don't forget you do get voltage sag, depending on how good your battery is and how hot your motor is, how many amps your motor's drawing. So if you have the alarm set to 6.6 volt, it'll beep straight away and warn you that the battery's going flat. And this icon will actually show you your LiPo pack voltage of the RC you're driving. So it can come in really, really useful. The range test option, basically that lets you press the button. The power setting is on normal. So if you press SW1, which I think it's this one, yep. So if you press and hold SW1, it drops the transmission power right down, so you can see if you can still control your RC or anything, and it's a good way of testing what's actually working and what's not. If you think you've chopped your antenna or something, you can put it onto low power, and if you're really struggling to control the RC over a very short distance, it's a pretty good chance you've broken your antenna. You can have the signal alarm, which gets really annoying. The signal loss setup, so you can tell it exactly how you want this to work. So you can have alarm type. You can tell it how long to wait before it does it. So it's going to wait 2 seconds before it says signal lost, and you can change all that. And then the update receiver mode, where you put your receiver into forced update mode. You've got FGR4, 4B, 4S&P, FGR8B, 12B, and the INR4GYB, and you just select the receiver you've got and click update once it's in update mode. But hopefully that clears up a bit of confusion and gives you a good idea of what these menus actually cover. And yeah, thanks again for watching WTF Rc Cars. If you find this interesting or entertaining, or just like listening to my incessant ramblings, don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, share to friends and family, and catch you guys again in the next one.